And a good Wednesday afternoon to you. This is Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Gray Bar, driven by the folks at Munganast St. Louis Acura and Munganast Alton Toyota. Claibs, you and I were together for about a half an hour on Monday as you picked me up from the airport. I got in that 2024 Highlander from Munganast Burkhardt Alton Toyota, dropped you off at your house, and then started north as I got to St. Louis around 4 o'clock yesterday. So but beautiful ride all the way up, and that screen. I'll tell you what, the screen in that car on the 2024 Highlander, bigger than the TV that I had in my dorm room back in my freshman year of college.
Yeah, they didn't spare any expense as far as making that cockpit very, very comfortable. And
Yeah.
You're right. And, there's some companies that are going to start having their dashboard. It's going to be like a gaming screen. It's going to kind of encompass the whole dashboard. I know there are a couple of manufacturers. I think they're going to unveil it for next year. So interior of cars is about to change, but the Highlander is certainly right up there at the top. Not to mention just a very comfortable ride. I mean, It's an SUV, but it rides like a very smooth luxury car. So if you haven't had one and haven't had a chance to check one out, you better go by and check them out at Munganast Burkhardt Toyota over in Alton, Illinois.
I'm glad you said the word. I'm glad you mentioned the word cockpit for that, because if you have been in one of the Siennas, one of the vans that Toyota has, that's the best way to describe that. That is exactly what you're getting into in the Sienna. That is, a perfect explanation of it, and a good way to describe what, like, the Highlander, the RAV4, or I should say the 4Runner, what some of those other cars that they have out there are. And Claibs, once you make your way back here to St. Louis, we'll start doing shows again from Munganast Burkhardt Alton Toyota and Munganast St. Louis Acura, as you have been on the road for a few months now, and that's going to continue here over the next few, I guess, next week and a half, next 2 weeks of your life, as you'll be sleeping somewhere different pretty much every 3 or 4 days or so with the Cardinals road trip the way that it's about to be.
Yeah, it's getting ready to get hairy. We leave here on Sunday, and we get into Phoenix that night, and then we play the Cubs Monday and Tuesday. Off day on Wednesday in LA, and then we open up the season next Thursday. And then we leave from LA, go to San Diego. And here's the kicker. We have a 3 o'clock game on that Wednesday. And we don't get back to St. Louis until like midnight. All right. And then all of a sudden we have a 3:15 game the next day.
Not just any 3:15 game.
Yeah, it's the home
3:15 home opener in St. Louis, which is a holiday here in this town. And it's a lot different preparation for the players going into that game than any other normal, just regular, 6:45 start time.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a challenge, but I always tell people it's the second game that's even more challenging because you have an off day schedule, but the off day is basically a rain out day. So if we get rain on Thursday, that means we got to come back and do it all over again on Friday. And then there are no off days for a while. So there's a lot going on, but you know what? This is what we do. And, we just show up and do what we can.
Yeah. And you will be on the call, part of the broadcast team for KMOX once again, as the press release went out today. Season number 19 for you, Claibs, doing the broadcast, working with the Cardinals.
Yeah, 19 with the Cardinals, year 43, I think now. I started in 81. So it's 43, 48, 43. Let me get the calculator out. I'm losing track, man. Let's see. 2024, 81, 43 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say. It depends how you look at February of 81 for that. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Because this is something Andy Hanselman and I were talking about this on our show about first broadcast. Do you remember your first radio broadcast that you did in St. Louis?
With regard to being
just
on
like
the radio,
being on the radio, just prep work. No, the first show that you did, the first.
It was a Saturday night. It was Sports Open Line. I was on with Jim Holder, and Missouri had a pretty good basketball team that year. And we did a lot of basketball because there was nothing else going on. Football season was over with. The Blues were pretty good that year. That's right. The 81 team was pretty good. And I remember us talking about those things. And Missouri had a game, I believe they were going to face Virginia with Ralph Sampson. So yeah, I remember it.
Yeah, we were, because I remember the first show I did. I was on 1380. I did 10 to midnight, and it was one of those cases where you think that you're all prepared, you think you have everything ready to go, you have all your notes and everything, and then you get 10 minutes into the show, and it's oh shit, that didn't last that long, did it? Type of
yeah, yeah. But see, that's why
you had a co-host.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is, I've done shows by myself. And while I may make bullet points about things I want to talk about, I don't get caught up in just trying to script the whole thing as far as, and I know people consider themselves trying to be better prepared, and I get it. I still think this is a business of feel and how you have a feel for your show and your direction, your listeners. Me, I don't take phone calls. I don't think I've taken one in 20 years. Yeah, I think the last phone call I took might have been like 2009. No, it was maybe 2006, I believe, 2005, 2006. So, text messaging has come into play and other things. But back then, you relied on callers. Yep. I've always been a believer that nobody turns the radio on to listen to a caller. Because in most cases, that caller doesn't have the understanding and backstory knowledge of a lot of subjects. It's not their fault. They're just not in the business. Now, if they want to ask an opinion or something along that line, that's fine. But when it comes to their opinion, I mean, what are they basing it on?
Right.
And so I'm not one that advocates. So I think the texting is a little bit better because you can sift through what's
absolutely
a conversation.
Yeah. Claibs, that time that we were together on Monday, we were talking about the Cardinal roster. And then later that night, as I was driving, I was on with Joe Pott on KMOX, and we talked about a similar thing about kind of looking at this roster construction of the Cardinals going into it back a month and a half ago. You kind of looked at it and you said, okay, there's our 26. That's what it's going to be. Maybe there's a job or two open in the bullpen. And then as spring goes on, as injuries happen, there's a few more questions before you guys get on that plane and head to Arizona, and then probably a few more before the actual 26 head up to LA to start the year. With the injuries right now to Lars Nootbaar and Tommy Edman, man, you look around there, and if you have 4 spots on that bench, it's really hard pressed to figure out who number 4 is going to be right now. There's a deserving answer in Victor Scott, but it's not an easy answer given all of the strings that are attached to a guy like a Victor Scott and his service time and what that means for playing time for a lot of others.
Yeah. Well, who are your other 3?
Other 3, Matt Carpenter, Brandon Crawford, Herrera, yes.
Okay. Yeah, this whole starting the clock thing, look, you're trying to put the best players on the field, okay? And if you're that concerned about starting somebody's clock and they're a good player, then we got bigger issues to address at this point. This team needs talent, okay? This team needs a spark. This team needs someone who can do something that nobody else can do. And if he's 22 years old and he doesn't have any service time, then you know what? You got to play him.
Yeah.
I mean, my question is, what are you waiting for? Because you've expressed that you could intend on competing this year. We haven't heard the word rebuild, reload, competing. And if you're going to compete, then you have to have your best players out there. Now, the challenge is what that roster looks like today or on opening day is not going to look the same way in May or June or August or July, or whatever. So you have to be careful in making sure, A, you don't stunt the growth, and 2, you want to make sure that whomever you have on the roster can actually contribute. And if you can't contribute, then we can't have you because, the rosters don't look different for this reason. We're not looking for a guy who's a pinch hitter coming off the bench. Okay. Think about this. Ask yourself the question of those 9 that Ollie's going to roll out there every day or 8 or whatever. What guy would you pinch hit for late in the ballgame?
I guess the only thing that you would be looking at, I'm trying to if there's a really bad lefty-lefty matchup, you go with somebody, you look for that. But that's the thing, you don't have a right-handed bat. So
there you go.
If Brendan Donovan's coming up against a lefty that he has had no success against in his entire career, you don't have a righty on the bench right now to put in there for him.
You don't have a righty in the organization.
Right.
Right? You don't have one in the organization that can give you a professional at bat.
Yeah.
So I think that they feel like they can turn this thing around and be more aggressive on that front and just stay with those guys. And the guys on the bench would be spot starters instead of pinch hitters.
And by the way, in this scenario, too, I just want to throw out there with the injuries that we have, one name that we haven't mentioned is Alec Burleson, because right now, Alec Burleson's either your opening day DH or your opening day left fielder. Brendan Donovan being the other one in that scenario. So between Burleson, Gorman, and Donovan,
I don't know. I think he's probably more of a left fielder now than he is DH because you have Donovan. You have 3 people for 2 spots: Donovan, Gorman, and Burleson.
Yeah.
Donovan, you want to have his bat in the lineup every day. Gorman, you want his power. So I think Burleson makes it as a left fielder. Now, the question is, if you put him in left, who's going to be in center? I think you have to look at it this way. I think you have to set up Carlson against lefties because he don't hit right. He don't hit lefties. He don't hit righties that well. So, I mean, you got a lot of different scenarios you have to play with between now and when opening day starts. And I also think you have to make sure, and this is where the analytics department comes into play. You got to peel this thing down and just look at the matchups and who does what against whom. If this guy's got a good slider, who hits a slider? Which one of my guys hits a slider or hits this guy? Yeah. I know there was a really interesting discussion today on the game about the pitcher choice this year. And everybody seems to think it's the splitter. Well, if you got a guy who can throw a splitter, then you know what, you're going to have some problems. So I just think that, man, we have come down to splitting hairs on who's going to play for this team.
If you look at yesterday's lineups, yesterday was a split squad game. So you had 18 guys in the lineup between 2 games yesterday. You had all of your starters in there between those 2 spots. Donovan, Goldschmidt, Gorman, Arenado, Contreras were the first 5 in the order, and Jupiter. And then in Port St. Lucie, Wynn, Walker, Burleson, Herrera were your top 4 in that lineup. When you look at the rest of the names on there, Sagasi, Pareto, Baker, Rivas, Ciani, Koperniak. You look at Fermin. Are one of those names, I mean, is that the 4th guy that you're looking at if Victor Scott is not the guy that you're going to take?
Unfortunately, yes. But I think that sends a real concerning message because those guys aren't better than what Victor Scott has shown in spring training. Now, the advantage they have over Victor Scott, some of these guys have had some AAA, if not big league experience. So you have that working in his favor, in their favor. But again, I go back to putting the best players on the roster, not players with service time, not players with this, guys who can help you win a game. And if you don't do that, I think you leave yourself open for a lot of skepticism.
We've seen the Cardinals now. We saw them recently go out. They signed Brandon Crawford for more veteran leadership, for a guy to back up a young Mason Wynn there at short. Looking at free agents that are out there, as far as a right-handed bat, as far as power in the lineup, we saw the deal that Blake Snell took to go to the Giants. at some point, I mean, do you look at a free agent out there? JD Martinez is still out there. He's a right-handed bat. He's 36 years old. He's at the end of his career. Is that a deal that you are willing to make on a 1-year deal for a guy like that?
Well, it depends on what he wants. I mean, obviously, a guy who hit 30-plus home runs last year, you definitely want to kick the tires on him. Do you go back and look at a Tommy Pham who's more versatile? He's not going to hit as many home runs, but he can play all three outfield positions, and he's a right-handed bat, and he hits fastballs really well. Then you look at the next tier of guys, and I don't even know where to start with that because there's a lot of guys who are just out there who might not command as much money. But, yeah, I mean, I like to have a righty. I like to have a right-handed bat. If you're not going to bring up Scott, but, here's the challenge. You got to get him on the field. You got to get him in the lineup. And so, when you have a lefty, does he go in the lineup? If he goes in the lineup, then what's Wilson Contreras going to do?
Yeah.
Because you want Herrera to hit. You want Contreras to hit. So, you got a lot of things that I think they still have to work out with regard to the roster construction. And then what's it going to look like in a month? If Tommy Edman is able to come back and contribute, if Lars Nootbaar is able to come back and contribute, how much time do you give them to play themselves into a contributing role? Those are issues that you have to think about also. So there are a lot of things up in the air right now, which is a little befuddling with regard to who's going to do what, because I think this roster is going to change quite a bit. You're going to see some guys go on the IL. I think that what they do, I don't think Edman starts the season. Well, he's not going to start the season. He may end up on the 60-day because he needs to get some at-bats. You got to wait for the minor league season to start. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this. So when you think about the roster on opening day, man, it's going to be hard to figure that out, let alone what it's going to look like in a month and a half.
And then you look around the rest of the league and rest of the division, I should say. And, we've talked plenty about the Cubs and just kind of the quiet offseason that they had outside of the Bellinger signing that they did late to get him back to the north side. And then the Brewers trading away Corbin, and now the injury to Williams, missing possibly 2 months or more of his season. And what Woodruff also shut down too, right? Right. He shut down for a bit too. So I know you've mentioned the Reds a few times as a team to watch in the NL Central, but it does seem pretty wide open right now with the teams that are in the Cardinals division.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when you look at the Cubs, they're going to be a team that you have to pay attention to because here's the thing that we don't talk about. They're good defensively. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have pretty good batting order. The third base situation, I think they're going to settle on Christopher Morel, who apparently can play everywhere. Everywhere he's played, he seems like he's been a good player. You have Gold Glovers up the middle. You have a Gold Glover in left field. So you got some really good components. Now their question is, are they going to have enough pitching? But everybody in the division is saying that. So I think it's Cubs, Cardinals, Reds, not necessarily in that order, but I think those three teams are going to really battle each other, and they're going to have their highs and lows.
Cardinals open the season next Thursday, a 4-game series against the Dodgers. They will be back in St. Louis the Thursday after that, a 3-game series against the Marlins. And that weekend, Saturday, April 6th, 25,000 fans ages 16 and older will take home a mystery Cardinal Hall of Fame parade car bobblehead thanks to Ford. You will either get Jason Isringhausen or the secret weapon, Jose Oquendo. For details, visit cardinals.com/promotions for tickets to that game on April 6th. We will take a break. When we come back, get into a little hoops action as the tournament is underway. The play-in games in Dayton started up last night. The field of 64 starts tomorrow, and we will talk about that and more hoops news right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura.
Are you ready for a challenging and rewarding career? There are quality jobs in the construction industry. I got out of college and my career choices were very limited, and this provided me with a plan for the present and the future at the same time.
I actually have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was making less than I make as a first-year apprentice painter.
I didn't go to college. I have no college debt. I make more money than the majority of people I know that went to college.
Take your first step towards a rewarding career. Visit stlouispdf.org.
Back here, lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganass St. Louis Acura, here on claibsonline.com, also on claibsonline.com. New today, That's the Grip, episode 2 with Cardinal newcomer Kyle Gibson. He goes over his, what did he have? 6, 7 pitches that he
about six of, about a half a dozen of them.
Yeah.
Too many for me to keep track of. I know this. Many of those pitches are staying in the middle of the plate a little too long right now. It's been a rough spring for him. And I think when you have so many pitches you want to work on, you have to have conviction on when and what to throw. Now, this guy's been around for a while, so I don't think he has a problem with that. But at the end of the day, while those pitches are things in his repertoire, guys, they're sitting on these things now. And I'll tell you one thing, Joe. I've never seen more guys first pitch swinging in spring training than I have this year. I mean, These guys are jumping on that get me over fastball unlike anything I've seen. And I think Gibson kind of got caught up in that cycle at one point as well, where they were hitting him hard. He had some defense that was a little sloppy behind him as well. But you kind of hope that he kind of turns this thing around here fairly soon, just to give everybody else a little bit more confidence about, the impact. Granted, it's a long season, and you feel like he's going to be a better pitcher. He won 15 games last year. So, he knows how to win. But there's some work to be done within this rotation.
Claibs, last night we saw the first play-in games in Dayton. Before we get to the college hoops action, I know a story that is near and dear to you transpired over the weekend at the girls Missouri State championships, as Incarnate Word head coach Dan Roffles had a medical incident after the semifinal game for the girls before they played the championship game the next day. He is recovering, but a scary moment for a man that I know you know well.
Yeah, Dan and I go back to when my kids were there. He coached my kids. And I've always stayed in touch with him. He's the best coach in the state of Missouri. 131 consecutive wins. And if you look at their schedule, it's normally a national schedule. So, because I don't think anybody locally has beaten them in 5-6 years, easy. So their losses normally take place against other nationally ranked teams. And when you look at their roster, these kids come from everywhere. And, he's a maker of people. He's got a lot of kids that have come back and have done a lot of great things in their communities and within the school itself. Just a great person. And I'm glad that Incarnate Word is able to keep him. St. Louis, you had a chance to get him a few years ago, and that didn't go well. And I think it was the best thing that ever happened to St. Louis because he's that good of a coach. He's got some good young coaches working under him. And I understand he's on the mend. And hopefully we'll see him back in St. Louis in the very near future. Well, he's back in St. Louis. We'll see him up and around because when you think about they've won 131 games. They've won 10 out of the last 11 state championships. If you look at his record, he's won over 700 games. He's 52 years old. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of pluses for what he's able to provide and his staff and the athletic department and just the administration has been able to provide him. So I'm pulling for him to get healthy, and I'm looking forward to seeing him on the sidelines next year.
Let's talk about you mentioned best coach in St. Louis. We're going to have a new coach.
No, Missouri, state of Missouri.
State of Missouri. I'm sorry, but we're going to have a new coach at SLU next year as they parted ways with Travis Ford after this past season. That job is open right now. SLU targeting Josh Schertz, who was the head coach of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over at Indiana State these past few seasons, a team that did not get a bid to the NCAA tournament this year, even though they were in the top 30 in the RPI.
Well, let's back up for a minute. Are they targeting or just talking? First of all, we have to establish something. And I've said this before. St. Louis U is not big time. All right. They're in a conference that's average at best. They have no real tradition. They turned out some pros, Bonner and Larry Hughes, Jordan Goodwin. But they don't have anything that makes it sizzle. And I know they have a great facility. That's great. But you know what? A lot of schools have great facilities. So who is St. Louis U? When I was doing the games with Rammer, we were trying to mirror ourselves with Xavier. Well, Xavier passed St. Louis U. In later years, they tried to mirror themselves with Dayton, but Dayton passed them by. Then it was Gonzaga. Well, we know that never was going to happen. So now here you are trying to create an image for a program that's never had one. And when it comes down to your so-called boosters not wanting to pay the buyout for Travis Ford, that ought to tell you something. So that's going to come out of the university's pocket, not that they're hurting for cash. But the bottom line is, if you look at these other programs around the country, when they have to get rid of a coach, they have somebody write the check out.
No.
Okay. Or they have it within their own athletic department. So we need to establish who they are. So now we go to this Josh Schertz guy, who most people had never heard of before this year. He had a good year at Indiana State, didn't win anything, didn't get in the tournament. So we're making a big deal about a guy who didn't get in the tournament because he had a shitty schedule. That's it more than anything else. They were nationally ranked for 20 minutes? And then they got knocked off and they never recovered. I don't know if this guy can coach or not, but maybe he's the right person for SLU because he has a very small resume. And spare me when I hear people talk about, well, he won 20-something games. He won 23 games here. This, hey, listen, I don't care how many games you win. I want to know how many times you've been in the tournament because that's what we're here for. That's how people get fired now. When you're not in the tournament, you got to go. And when you look at his situation, and I know he has good players, at least they say he does, but the bottom line is they're not in the tournament. And he's had this very brief run where people are starting to notice who he is. Now, maybe with better facilities and better situation, maybe he can develop St. Louis U. But if I'm Josh Schertz or any other coach, I'm going to ask him one thing. What's in the NIL account? How much money do you have in the NIL account? Because if I don't have any money, then I have no chance.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that it comes to that. But if you don't ask that question, then we hired the wrong coach.
They will, as it's.
And they're going to other people they're going to talk to. I think what you mentioned when you said they targeted him, he's on their list. I'm sure Chris May has others on his list. And I think you have to decide on what is the criteria. Is this a guy who can recruit? Is this a guy who can coach? Is this a guy who's going to bring our program to a respectable level? Mm-hmm. So I think it's got to be a lot of things.
Right now, tournament, as I mentioned, starts. Well, the field of 64 starts tomorrow. Claibs, we have not had back-to-back men's champions since the 2006-2007 Florida Gators team. Yeah. UConn comes in as the number 1 overall seed. Have you seen enough of them this year to even give an opinion on whether or not?
I think, UConn, Houston are two teams that are very well coached. And the reason why I think they can both get there is because they didn't have as much of a turnover. So, you have some of these teams that are in this thing and they had a turnover. They had some portal guys, and that's great. But have the portal guys all play together when the tournament's on the line? And I think if you have that team that has the cohesiveness that UConn has, I think that gives them a distinct advantage over some of these teams that got hot at the right time, but have no idea as a team in the tournament what this is like.
So those two, anybody, I mean, is there anyone else? Have you filled out a bracket yet? I have not.
No. You know what? I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I may not even do it. And I got to be honest with you. I was not enthralled with what I saw from college basketball this year. A, there wasn't a dominant team. UConn's probably the closest as we have. B, because of the portal and the NIL, guys are moving around so much that it's really hard to keep track. You really have to have a program to keep track of who's doing what. And it just wasn't fun. Wasn't fun. And obviously we didn't have good basketball in our area, whether it's SLU or SIU, or Mizzou, none of these teams did anything. We don't have anybody in the tournament. You have to look at Illinois. Illinois could be a team that could make it interesting because, they have size. and they didn't lose too many people. They picked up a couple of good players.
And
So
they have
Illinois
one. They have one really talented player too, in Terrence Shannon, who, if he goes off and he takes over a few weeks, I mean, he gives himself 4 good games in a row, and that leads you right into the Final Four. So
yeah, but here's the thing with Shannon: as good as he is, they have some other guys that are starting to pick up that slack. So because you know what, they're long, man. They're one of the taller teams in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very athletic. So they could be a team that could make it interesting. I think Underwood's a good coach. They guard people. So, when you look at the tournament games, it really is like a 5 to 8 minute stretch that decides the games and what you do defensively.
I will say this for those people that are still filling out the brackets and looking for a different way to go about it. If you go to Matt Nordlander's Twitter account, he is a writer for CBS Sports Claibs. He somehow got in touch with 64 plus head coaches, to ask them their favorite bands or musical artists, and got answers from all 68 in the tournament. And Claibs, if you are wondering who, I'll just tell you this: Dana Altman and also Greg Campy, whoever the Kentucky's playing, both huge Eagles fans. I know as you are. So if you're looking for a dark horse in the tournament, there are some maybe first round upsets that you can throw out there.
That's kind of like when the women pick in the office the color of the uniform so they're cute, and the next thing you know, they're in the Final Four.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with on court ability. It just there's the intangible, we like to call it. That is the reason why we pick certain teams.
Whoever Will Wade is, whoever's playing Gonzaga in the first round, he's a big Earth, Wind, Fire guy too, Claibs. So thought I'd throw those out to you.
So I'm looking for Eagles teams, Earth, Wind, and Fire. What other? Do we have Prince on that list?
Who are you looking for? Prince.
Nico
Medved, head coach at Colorado State, is a Prince guy. He's on there as I'm scrolling through.
Steely Dan.
I did not see anybody as a fan of Steely Dan. Yale's head coach James Jones, a Marvin Gaye fan, on the list.
Any P-Funk, any Parliament Funkadelic.
Did not see that. Here's one I question. Here's one I think these coaches gave answers based on recruiting. Both John Shire, the head coach at Duke, and John Calipari, the head coach at Kentucky, they both picked Drake as their favorite musical artist. I feel like they are doing that to purely recruit young players and trying to seem hip and cool to those guys. I don't see John Calipari or John Shire as Drake. Either one of them is a Drake fan.
Which leads me to believe they probably didn't fill it out themselves. Somebody in sports information department filled that out.
Just like the coaches polls, top 25.
Exactly.
We will take a break. When we come back, we will wrap it up with a little NFL discussion right here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura.
A swing and a long drive. It's a goaler in the Cardinal bullpen.
I'm a superpower. Yeah. Stand tall. Yeah. Raise strength from within me. Work hard till I die to the top. Take it with me. No heights of my greatness. Now I'm free from the limits. I can fly like I'm weightless.
Gotta say, if you're watching us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever it is, you just saw the commercial there for the Cardinals and the long sleeve pullover. That's a nice looking giveaway the Cardinals are going to have first weekend of the season. That's the April 7th game. That's it's the powder blue long sleeve pullover. That's a nice looking giveaway for the Cardinals.
Let's hope it doesn't come in handy early in the season.
It will.
See, you know what? I haven't even started to do my Farmer's Almanac, what the weather's going to look like on opening day weekend. We've had some good ones and some bad ones. So
there was that series last year. I remember opening day last year, cold. That was pants. That was jacket weather. And then the very next series against the Braves, there was like 80-something degrees, like you're sitting in the stands with a t-shirt and shorts on, and like 3 days after that, and then come May, it's back to being cold again. So yeah, it's always going to be a struggle that first week of April. But you're up there in the Mike Shannon press radio booth, so you're comfortable up there.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
No
hey,
doubt.
NFL free agency started up last week. We haven't had a chance to really talk much about it. Biggest thing going on right now, the biggest splash made so far in NFL free agency. I know we talked a little about running backs last week, but looking at what the Steelers have done with their quarterback position, they go out, they sign Russell Wilson to about $1 million deal, and then they go and trade for former first-round pick Justin Fields from the Bears, which I think a lot of people were thinking the Bears were going to maybe trade him for a first-round pick, kind of swap with a team that needed a quarterback. Falcons were big on that list of potential Josh Field landing spots. They end up trading him for a third-day pick, a 6th-round pick for what was Josh Fields for 11th overall. Yeah, when he was drafted by the Bears 4 years ago. So now you have the Steelers, and the Steelers have somehow gone from Kenny Pickett as their quarterback to now having a choice between Russell Wilson or Justin Fields over the next couple of years.
Yeah, you know what? That was kind of a head scratcher on what they got in return. And, I know that there's some that feel like Fields' value was overrated and a lot of teams were going to walk away from him, which apparently that could have been the case. And then you heard other stories like they had better offers, but they wanted to do Fields right by sending him somewhere where he wanted to go. I know he's a big fan of Russell Wilson's game, and maybe that helps. But I just think it's interesting. And I think what it also says is this: you cannot mortgage your season on one quarterback. You better have 2 guys that can play because they go down too quick. And if one guy goes down and your season is shot, I think that you see enough people who now say, look, man, let's go out and get us another guy who gives us a chance. And I think the best example would be Joe Flacco. They went out and got a guy who could give him a chance. And what did he do? He took him a long way. And because there's just too much riding on it. There's just too much riding on the season. And if you're a good team, you figure out how to deal with the so-called quarterback controversy that you're going to have the media concoct during the course of the year. Because if those guys stay ready and prepared and their styles are mirrored, then I think you have a better chance to succeed and survive the injury bugs that come with this.
Caleb Williams, the USC quarterback, who is the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the draft this year, he had his pro day at USC today. And if he does end up going to the Bears have 2 picks now in the top 10 of the draft. They have gone out. They have added Keenan Allen to their wide receiving core. They have gone, they have made some necessary moves to improve that offense and give Caleb Williams a lot of targets. But so far, I haven't seen any kind of offensive line help coming their way. I don't know. Do you go with that second pick that the Bears have? If Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, do you go with him? Or do you make sure that he has somebody blocking for him up front?
I'm going to go get me the best left tackle I can find. And, here's something else they might want to think about. You might want to go get yourself another quarterback to mentor this kid.
I believe Carson Wentz is rumored to be going to be the –
That would be a good step. That would be a good step. I don't think you can just roll him out there with Joe Schmo. I think you better have somebody with some real ring experience, and then Carson Wentz could be that guy. But I got to give me a tackle, man. I got to get somebody who can block. I might even free agent market and get another one.
Yeah, that's that. Any other surprises to you so far? The Chargers have.
I'll tell you a surprise. Maybe some saw it coming, and he kind of hinted about it last year. Aaron Donald walking away, and I commend him because he's going to be reasonably healthy. That's a huge hole for the Rams, who are already a little suspect on defense. That, to me, was a little bit of a shock. I think what you're seeing in San Diego is just the fact that Jim Harbaugh has decided what he has currently isn't going to work for what he wants to do in the future. So they want to try and do this on the fly. I don't know if they can or not, but I just think that they want to move on from some people who they think probably gave them their best years.
With Aaron Donald retiring, Claibs, there are five former St. Louis Rams still left in the NFL.
Who are they?
Case Keenum, Greg Zuerlein, Johnny Hecker, Rodney McLeod, and Rob Havenstein.
Yeah, Havenstein. I knew of him. I didn't know who the other ones were. And good for them being able to survive as long as they have.
Yeah, a kicker and punter. It's not as strange to see those guys.
Yeah, but when you see linemen survive, and linemen and the special team guys survive, that's a different story. But congratulations on them being able to survive and carry what brief memories they have of St. Louis.
Not only that, Havenstein, he has been with the Rams the entire time too.
Right.
He has started 130 games for them since starting in St. Louis in 2015, and is still there today. To be on one team as a lineman for 10 years is
that says a lot.
Yeah,
it says a whole lot.
And to stay healthy for that time as well. So, Claibs, how many more games do you have left in Florida?
All of them. Now through Sunday. Starting tonight. So it'll be a busy time. You're trying to pack up things and get everything situated, get the house straightened out before you leave. Try and, get a good dinner in with some friends that you normally hang out with here. So it's a hectic time.
What is the best meal that you have eaten down there in spring training so far this year?
Great question. There's a place down in Delray Beach. Tremonti's is good. Seminole Reef Grill is good. Limoncello, you can't go wrong there. You know what? I haven't had many bad meals here. I mean, you have the local spots you try and go to, like Leftovers is a good spot. I know everybody loves Jetties, and Jetties has always been consistent. But it's kind of hard to find a bad meal here because this area is driven on food and beverage. Okay. This is what they do. And, their issue, like everybody else, is making sure you have enough people. But, you have people who from the north who come down here and work, during this time of year. And so they look forward to it. So, it's been pretty good. I don't have any complaints.
You guys will head out to Arizona, play the Cubs out there. Have they ever done this before?
No.
I like it. I like that they're doing that and making.
We won't do it again. Unless we're going to open up on the West Coast.
Right, and it made sense. Whoever saw that on the schedule and came up with that idea, commend them for doing that, because it gives gives St. Louis fans another thing to do for spring training, a different option to go out there and see what Arizona spring training is like. And it's a different beast out there in Arizona than what it is down in Florida when you have all of the options there in front of you. Baseball started this morning, by the way. Dodgers over the Padres. They will play again tomorrow morning, those games in South Korea before they come back. So the Dodgers already have 2 games under their belt by the time the opener, the Shohei debut next Thursday happens in LA. And Claibs, next week when you and I talk, I guess we'll do it when you're in Arizona next week, leading up to the the season opener next Thursday in Los Angeles. Until then, he is Mike Claiborne. I am Joe Roderick. This has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Gray Bar, driven by our friends over at Munganast St. Louis Acura, Munganast Burkhardt, Alton Toyota, here on ClaibsOnline.com.
Nobody wants a surprise in their jelly donut. That's because the middle is the most important part. At Gray Bar, we're at the middle of electrical and datacom jobs across the country, connecting installers, facility managers, and business owners with smart solutions for their most challenging projects, which means stocking and delivering crucial products on time and on budget, with no surprises, thanks to our nationwide logistics network. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Who's this?